please allow me to introduce to you 18 points of our platform for this campaign and for our effort to transform the United States. The ancient art of Aikido teaches us that if an opponent throws a punch at you, the most effective approach is not to respond with a blow of equal force against that opponent, but rather to redirect the force of that opponent's punch in a new direction, rendering it harmless or even positive in consequence. That ancient wisdom, Asian wisdom, must be at the heart of our response to the current crisis. We face a bleak political and economic landscape, but there are millions of capable and thoughtful people who can be mobilized to transform everything if only they can be motivated and inspired by something other than fraudulent sound bites. Our approach is not progressive or conservative, but rather transformative in the true sense of the word. 18-point platform. 1. We will not recognize any election that is not fair. The current election system is so corrupt as to be meaningless. The qualified candidate is not allowed on the ballot, and his or her ideas and activities are blocked out by a media that denies citizens access to critical information. Votes are counted using computer systems designed to be hacked, leaving no evidence of the sacred choice of the people. Regions inhabited by the poor are supplied with so few voting machines that tired mothers and fathers must wait for hours in line, shivering as the dusk descends. We cannot recognize as legitimate any election for president or for any other office until the nation holds an internationally supervised election in which every citizen is guaranteed the right to vote in a manner easily verified, and every qualified candidate can present his or her policies directly to the people. The entire election must be handled in a transparent manner, and commercial advertising must be banned. We do not have legitimate elections, but we do have a moral obligation to reject its entire process. I do not worry that running for president, no rich man will fund me, no political parties will back me. We know that the election of 2020 will be so fraudulent that we cannot escape the results. We cannot accept the results or recognize those who claim to have won. Moreover, those who will be elected will soon prove that they do not represent the people in any sense of the word. We, the people, will wait until an illegitimate election is held, one in which candidates like myself are allowed to participate. 2. Climate change is the overwhelming security threat. The response must include every aspect of domestic and foreign policy. A full commitment to a 100-year plan for the mitigation of and adaptation to climate change must be at the center of all security, economic, and educational policy for the United States. We must devote all resources, committing ourselves to the equivalent of a war economy in order to reduce the use of petroleum and coal to zero within 2 to 3 years. The government will set forth directives that require the rapid reduction in the use of all fossil fuels, that ends the use of private automobiles, and that restricts the use of airplanes. We will finance the installation of solar power and wind power generators in every neighborhood. All intellectual property rights for these technologies will be taken over by the government for this purpose and provided for free. Upgrades for all buildings to near zero carbon emissions will be undertaken immediately, including maximum insulation for all homes within 2 months. The government will do so employing 50-year loans that will make renewable energy cheaper than fossil fuels. We will end all subsidies for petroleum, coal, and uranium. These fuels will be designated as controlled substances that cannot be sold for profit. The military will convert to 100% renewable energy more quickly than the rest of the country, and it will be transformed thereby from the greatest enemy of the environment to its most powerful defender. Polluting fighter planes and outdated aircraft carriers will be scrapped immediately without any concern for the profits that they might generate for corporations. Those who stand to lose jobs will be guaranteed employment in renewable energy projects. Oil and gas corporations have made trillions of dollars pushing dangerous substances on our citizens that they knew full well were destroying the environment. Such actions are criminal by law. The assets of these corporations and of their owners will be seized by the government and used to finance the transformation of our economy. Wasting energy, food, and natural resources will be recognized for the abomination that it is, and will never be promoted as a symbol of a better life. The government will supervise the creation of truly sustainable urban and suburban communities and undertake the restoration of wild areas to assure biodiversity. That will mean tearing up the malls, the parking lots, the factories, and the freeways that have defiled our sacred forests and our precious, precious wetlands. 3. COVID-19 is but one security threat and should not be used as an excuse to give trillions of dollars to speculators. The COVID-19 outbreak is killing people and deserves a serious response. We must build up public medical facilities and end homelessness, close down immigrant detention camps, and educate people so that they can understand for themselves and respond to the disease now and in the future in a scientific manner. We must not respond by giving trillions of dollars away to investment banks and some chump change for working people. COVID-19 is not the Black Plague, and it is clearly being hyped up to grease the way to create an even more repressive environment. Many progressives and conservatives have been happy to sign up for the equivalent of a Patriot Act that gives away control of the economy to major private banks without any congressional review or transparency. We cannot allow a corrupt media to be silent on the number of youth killed by guns or the number of people, working people in America, who drink water poisoned with lead or with carcinogenic chemicals used in fracking. We cannot replace this discussion of the truth with wall-to-wall reporting on COVID-19. 4. Launching an international scientific investigation into the past which so many people refuse to confront. We cannot come to grips with the threat of climate change and of nuclear war until we shake off the sick culture of denial that has gripped us for the last 20 years. We must conduct a fearless investigation into the actions taken by a small group of powerful men after the 2000 election, including the so-called 9/11 incident. The power of the scientific method must be employed by international truth and reconciliation teams to reveal the honest story for our citizens and for the world to see. There should be no limits on how far the investigation goes. Granted the seriousness of the case, all related materials must be declassified. Nor shall we be satisfied with some simplistic tales that blame just one group or another. Murder on the Orient Express was a solvable crime. 5. bring the United States military home, and upgrade the United Nations. The United States must bring back the troops deployed around the world, troops so often exploited in mercenary enterprises to serve the interests of the wealthy. We must be ready to fight and to die for true international security, but not to do so only in the strictest, but to do so only in the strictest sense as defined by the Charter of the United Nations. It would be better to risk our lives in the noble battle against the forces of greed, to protect the soil beneath our feet, to assure the pure waters of our oceans are not poisoned, and to preserve forests in perpetuity rather than fight these pointless foreign wars. The United Nations must be the primary space wherein we plan for our fragile planet and then implement those plans. But it can only be done if that institution undergoes a complete reform that empowers it to represent the citizens of the earth without the interference of corporations or of wealthy individuals. 6, corporations are not people. The rich get only one vote. Corporations are not people, and they have no role to play in the formulation of policy. The same is true for the super rich and for the investment banks through which they exert their will. The information required for policymakers must be supplied by lifelong civil servants, professors, and other experts who can engage in an objective evaluation of the current state of our country without pressure to derive profit. The rich are just people. They have no more rights than anyone else. They should not have a special role in the determination of policy. Those who use money, directly or indirectly, to influence policy are engaged in corruption and bribery. Do not hide such criminality by using innocuous terms like consulting or lobbying. We must empower the civil service so that the government regains independence from corporations and can produce strict regulatory systems to protect the people. We have done it before, and we can do it again. In that process, many corporations, such as banks or communications and energy companies, will be nationalized and run by a competent staff of civil servants who have the common good as their sacred mission. Such ethical governance has precedents dating back to ancient times and does not require any ideological decorations. 7, an economy of the people and for the people. Without economic equality and the strict regulation of finance, democracy is not possible. While we slept, an elite faction generated great wealth by illegal and immoral means for decades and then hoarded it up overseas. Most of our citizens cannot even conceive of the corruption that has spread everywhere behind the sparkling facades of industry and of government. All this will stop. We will empower thousands of professional auditors at the Internal Revenue Service and other government bureaus who, supported by the FBI, will go forward and fearlessly conduct complete audits of all branches of government, including the Department of Defense. We will demand full financial audits of the Congress and of all its members. So also will the entire executive branch and all major members of the judiciary be audited. We will not be afraid to fire, fine, and imprison thousands of people or more if necessary. Once the government is focused once again on the concerns of our honorable citizens, we will do the same for corporations and for the super rich. Remember that those who roll in obscene wealth obtained it through unfair access to capital combined with illegal business practices. Their assets must be cut down to size so that they no longer use those funds to undermine journalism, politics, or education. Finance from now on will be a highly regulated field, primarily overseen by government organizations accountable to the people. Regional banks will be transformed into cooperatives that are run by the citizens for the sake of the local economy. 8. Support true education and investigative journalism. Politics cannot be legitimate if our citizens are denied access to quality education that they need in order to think critically about the state of our society and to make full use of the infinite potential locked away in their own imaginations. They need to learn history and literature, philosophy and science from a young age in order to be able to comprehend the complex issues of our generation. We will create a new education system in which all citizens are treated equally. The funds for schools will never be tied to local real estate taxes. Teachers will be well rewarded as any member of society. Everyone will be entitled to a quality education because we expect everyone to be an active citizen. Journalism is an extension of education. Journalism should inform our citizens about real issues, not sensationalist happenings, and it should teach them how to think critically about the economic and cultural realities behind the surface of things. Sadly, journalism has decayed into a disgraceful sludge that fills newspapers, TV, broadcasts, and internet postings with grotesque images and meretricious phrases, content that appeals to our worst angels. Whereas citizens should be learning to think objectively and to work together to create a better society, they are bombarded instead with refuse that stimulates sexual desire and promotes mindless consumption. The government must support an independent media at the local and the national level that is dedicated to the pursuit of truth and that encourages citizens to think for themselves. Investigative journalism about serious issues of our time, brave journalism, must be a viable career. Art, whether painting, sculpture, design, drama, music, or literature, must be a part of our citizens' lives. The government will support such activities because they give citizens the confidence to express themselves and to articulate a vision for our future on their own, without relying on shiny images or glib phrases produced by the corporate media. Fostering artistic expression will free youth from the banal and manipulative culture they face today, one that directs them towards short-term pleasures and robs them of the ability to contribute to their society, giving them the opportunity to make their own films, their own newspapers, and their own paintings and photographs, while being paid a decent wage for that work, will give them the confidence that they can change society. We will replace banal and demeaning commercial art with the redeeming and inspiring work of our own citizens. 9. The 13th Amendment and the end of slavery. The 13th Amendment of our Constitution explicitly prohibits slavery. Yet we have citizens, many forced into debt by contemptible practices, who work in factories and stores as effective slaves. We have citizens in prisons, often on trumped-up charges, forced to work for no pay, forced to pay for the right to see their loved ones. All these crimes are for the profit of corporations. These despicable practices will be ended, without exception, by the rigorous application of the 13th Amendment. 10. Trade must be ecological and truly free. Trade can be helpful on occasion, but as it is practiced today, it is deeply damaging to our precious ecosystem and to our people. Trade has become another word for the massive container ships controlled by investment banks, spewing horrid smoke as they carry goods across oceans in the interests of the very few, not of those who make the goods, nor of those who use them. It is not a positive, and it certainly is not internationalization, for local industries and farms to be destroyed by trade, and for our citizens to be rendered dependent on imported goods against their own will. We must, together, completely rethink what trade means and create a 100% fossil fuel-free trade system that is accessible to everyone and that respects the needs of local communities. 11. Moral decadence lies at the core of this political crisis. The current crisis is above all a spiritual crisis. We have fallen deep into decadence and into narcissism. They taint even those with the best of intentions. Modesty, frugality, and integrity have vanished from our vocabulary. The invisible inner world of values and of character have been replaced by a spectacle that renders the citizen but a passive consumer of filth. Until we can control our own actions and only then form communities that can demand justice and righteousness, until we can trust our neighbors, talk frankly with our children, and uphold common values, we will be incapable of standing up to the powers that have seized control of our country. Moral corruption means that many of those who speak of freedom and of justice are happy to take covert, illegal payments that they avoid speaking too much truth. This also will end. 12. Transform the military intelligence complex. The out-of-control military allows corporations to take our tax dollars and transfer them directly to their bank accounts through the sales of overpriced weapons not subject to outside review or to scientific tests. We need men and women willing to give their lives for their country. Those noble sentiments have been cynically misdirected. The military and the intelligence community that surrounds it as a penumbra must be transformed and dedicated above all to the mitigation of and adaptation to climate change and to other real security threats. The bravery of soldiers must be redirected to the dangerous duty of ending the rule of our country by fossil fuel giants and their lackeys, and to the task of transforming our economy. Soldiers, if you cannot stand up to the energy czars, how can you call yourselves brave? In violation of George Washington's warning of the dangers of entangling our peace and prosperity with the intentions of foreign countries, we have launched into numerous secret treaties, casually termed as intelligence sharing or security cooperation, that are leading us towards a catastrophe like that of 1914. Back then, a horrific domino effect was set off by such secret treaties that dragged the world into a catastrophic war. All of you who work at underpaid contract jobs for the NSA, all of you who read through our endless emails, all of you required to harass simple folk over foolish things for wanton corporations, please listen to me. Verily, I say unto thee, come with us. Thou hast nothing to lose but thy chains. 13. Stop the dangerous influence of technology on our citizens. The corporate media presents the exponential evolution of technology as an unmitigated positive. Yet in most cases, exposure to such new technologies has robbed us of the ability to focus, deprives us of the power to think for ourselves, and strips us of the awareness necessary to function as citizens in society. Technology is used increasingly as a means of inducing in us addiction to short-term stimulation. Such products generate profits for some, but they render citizens incapable of understanding the seriousness of the crisis that we face. We want to interact with others, and we need jobs that let us cooperate with others. But all we encounter is recorded messages, automated checkouts, and long rows of supercomputers coldly calculating corporate profits. We find ourselves entirely alone in a digital desert. This is no accident, but rather a premeditated crime. We must critically review how technology impacts society before we employ it. Technology can be immensely helpful, but only if it is applied to solve the real challenges of our age and not used to manipulate us. Scientific understanding of the state of the earth and of our society must be always our goal. We cannot confuse science with technology. As Paul Goodman wrote, quote, whether or not it draws on new scientific research, technology is a branch of moral philosophy and not of science. 14. Halt the anti-intellectual campaigns to dumb us down. Our citizens are subject to unending campaigns that encourage anti-intellectual sentiments and that discourage thinking deeply about the world. These changes in our culture are not natural, but are imposed by hidden forces who seek to render us docile. We must raise the level of intellectual engagement in every corner of our country and encourage people to think for themselves and to propose solutions of their own. Reading, writing, and debate are critical to that process and must be encouraged. Citizens should never rely on the facile and jejune opinions offered up by some celebrity. We cannot allow the poisonous forest of advertising and public relations firms to dumb down our citizens, or to impose from above a culture of narcissism and to promote the insidious cult of the self. Terrible indeed is the damage they have already done. Our citizens confront a banal wasteland that offers nothing, but that has taken over every TV channel, occupied every mall, and conquered every office. The advertising and PR industry must be subject to the strictest regulations so that our citizens are exposed to images in the media which encourage intellectual engagement and that support a healthy community. Citizens have the right to read articles and watch broadcasts that describe the reality of our lives in a scientific manner, and the right not to be subject to the programs that hold up as a model scenes from the indulgent lives of the rich. 15. Revive the Iroquois principle of 7 generations. End the cult of growth and consumption. Although the Constitution of the Iroquois Nation had a profound influence on the United States Constitution, its focus on sustainability was tragically overlooked by our founding fathers. The traditions of the Iroquois and of other native nations must not be forgotten. The 7th generation principle of the Iroquois Nation demands that we consider how our decisions today will influence the lives of our descendants 7 generations in the future. This principle is scientific and rational, and it stands in marked contrast to the irrational assumption that the oceans, forests, and grasslands are commodities that belong to individuals or corporations and can be destroyed for personal profit. The seventh generation principle must be added to the Constitution as an amendment, serving as the basis for a complete reevaluation of our economic and cultural assumptions. We must stop using the deceptive terms growth and consumption to assess the well-being of our nation. We must consider together the health of all our citizens, the weal of the environment, and the prosperity of wild animals and plants. Cooperation is essential to our survival. We cannot solve problems through budgets if budgets merely encourage dependency on money. We must create barter systems between citizens so that neighbors can assist each other and set up programs for mutual support that make families and communities self-sufficient. Health care cannot be provided merely by sloshing government money from one account to another. We must also empower citizens to care for each other, to learn enough of medicine, of herbal remedies, and of proper exercise to cure many illnesses on their own without using money at all. 16. Farming for the people and a healthy and fair food economy. The rapid rise in temperature brought on by global warming will cause an exponential increase in the cost of food over the next decade and will make farming once again the most critical activity for survival. We have not even started to prepare for this catastrophe. We must leave behind this bankrupt system of industrial farming and return to farming by the people and for the people. The land must be distributed to large numbers of citizens to be used as family farms. There is nothing to lament or to decry herein. The soil and the water granted to us by our Mother Earth has never been and never will be the property of corporations. The entire distribution system for agriculture, too, must be regulated and thereby made fair. It is more important to produce food in a manner that does not damage the soil or the water than it is for the few to make fortunes from agricultural exports. Americans must embrace sustainable organic farming and do so now. 17. Neither the Republican Party nor the Democratic Party are described in the Constitution. The three-ring circus of impeachment revealed to us that the current political system has nothing to do with the Constitution. Governance is dead, and politics has been reduced to a brawl between corporate lobbyists, investment bankers, media pundits, and the rich whom they serve. The media, having long abandoned any scrap of journalistic integrity, merely eggs on the wrestlers like a drunken mob. All debate surrounding the formulation of and implementation of policy must be handled in a transparent manner within government offices as defined by the Constitution. Yet today, policy is made by corporations or debated within opaque, unaccountable political parties in a blatantly unconstitutional manner. Do not be deceived. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party are not described in the Constitution, and they do not represent the vast majority of our citizens. Leaving decisions on policy to political parties that are not regulated by the Constitution is both criminal and unconstitutional, and the practice must be stopped. Political parties are an appropriate venue for citizens at the local level to meet and to exchange ideas. The Constitution grants the Democratic and Republican parties no role in governance or in the formulation of policy. 18. Eliminate nuclear weapons by any means necessary. Humanity faces an unprecedented risk of nuclear war right now, made even more dire by the promotion of usable mini-nuclear devices. We will commit ourselves to the elimination of these dangerous weapons from the earth, painful as that process will be. For the sake of our children, we will forcibly confiscate and destroy all nuclear weapons, starting in the United States, and then in all nations of the world. We will also work with committed groups of citizens at home and abroad, inside of government and outside. The development of nuclear weapons must be stopped.